Welcome in, welcome in. It is week 3 of Batting Cleanup. Good to have you, Alyssa Orange, alongside Evan Kamiko. The first 2 weeks were a lot of fun. We're going to keep it rolling, and I like the hat. A little foreshadowing there, Evan. By the way,
Absolutely.
We're going to kind of rat you out a little bit. He buys a hat everywhere we go. Everywhere
no, that's
we go.
fine. That's fine. Yes. That is something about me is you don't want to know how many hats that I own, and I think the last I really counted was probably in like senior year of high school, and it was up in like 400s.
Whew.
It's a problem. I have a serious problem. So new segment should just be hat of the week. This is
I love
my hat
it.
this week.
Great. It's
week
fitting.
Last week I wore a Jets hat. First week I wore a Yankees hat. So this week we were in, being at Globe Life, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I'm kind of like breaking a cardinal rule of wearing two baseball things.
Okay.
And I do want to talk about that at some point, whether
Cool.
or not it is okay as like a fan of like a team. Like if I'm not a fan of the Rangers, no affiliation.
Sure.
Just go to the stadium. So I guess I'm like breaking a cardinal rule of, well, you can't wear two teams, at the same time.
Yeah, that's a really good. I love it. Put it in our back pocket because, I was in a sorority. I know you were in a fraternity, and I remember them being like, don't double letter. Like, no double lettering. Did you guys have that?
We did.
Right? Like that's a rule. You can't double letter.
Yeah, can't double letter. Like we couldn't wear letters until like a couple weeks after we actually got initiated. So that was a whole other thing. Maybe we should just stop talking about baseball and just fraternity sorority.
maybe one of these episodes we'll just share some stories about it. But let's dive right in. Again, you're wearing that Rangers hat. You just got back from Globe Life Field, and I had a different experience than you did. You were there. Meanwhile, I'm at home fighting Mike Irwin for our Flow Sports sign-in. No joke. I was sitting in bed because I had the kids to myself this weekend. My husband was on a trip. So I was loving it. I was like, it's 9 o'clock. I'm in bed. I'm going to watch some baseball. And I would sign in, and I would watch it on my phone for a couple minutes, and then it would kick me out. Then I would refresh, and it would sign me back in, and it would kick me out. And I'd refresh, and I get in on Monday. And Mike Irwin's like, Flow Sports kept kicking me out. And I was like, oh, my bad. Sorry. That was me.
Mike, as we know, Mike isn't great with technology.
No. So I was just really.
I
was going to say, I was just happy he was on.
Mike, and this goes really off topic, but that's the point of our show, is Mike calls me Thursday night, and I haven't told you this yet, because I've been off the last couple of days, but Mike calls me Thursday night after you leave, and I'm home, like, making dinner, and he's like, yeah, so I think I messed something up on the computer, and got, like, kicked out of the ESPN stream somehow, don't know how. I was shocked when I didn't tell you the time it took me to walk Mike through how to get back on. Take a guess at how much time it took.
25 minutes.
2 minutes and 33 seconds.
Really?
Took me 2 minutes.
Wow.
I checked my phone after, like, the call time, because I was like, that was really fast for explaining something to Mike with technology. How long was that? Yeah, it was 2 minutes, 33 seconds. I was like, I heated up dinner and explained to Mike at the same time. I was multitasking. So.
I'm impressed. Yeah, no, he was not happy. And I was like, well, you might have been fighting with me. I'm sorry. And he was like, oh, okay. So that was our experience. Yours is very different.
Yes. Yeah, my experience was completely different. Being there for the full 3 games, Jacob Morris and I drove down on Friday. We got in around 3 o'clock. And it's funny, I was on the radio in Little Rock, and they were like, oh, so are you at the stadium yet? And I told them earlier in the day, I was like, no, we're on our way right now. And when they're calling, the first thing they asked me, they're like, so can you see the World Series championship banner hung up? And I'm like, guys, we're not in the stadium right now. Like we're in like downtown Dallas trying to fight through traffic. But then we finally got to the stadium, got the hotel changed, whatever, got to the stadium. And I got to tell you, I was a little underwhelmed by the stadium itself. And I know we'll talk about the games in a few. And Jacob and I were talking about this because it's a very nice stadium. It's very new, new school, whatever you see on TV, it's pretty legit to what it is in person, but there's nothing that kind of makes it Ranger specific, right? Like there's nothing, like a Green Monster, the Ivy at Wrigley, Camden Yards, and there's nothing that like a real like Texas staple of it yet. So I think it definitely loses a bit of credibility as a stadium itself, like in the kind of when you tier rank all of the stadiums in Major League parks. But very nice stadium, very well put together. I mean, the event was, for the most part, very good, besides us not really understanding the filming rules. And because nobody really knew, and it was like we were just kind of talking our way through to try to get a good view of the field. Otherwise, we're shooting way up high.
Yeah.
So did I almost have to sneak into a sweet box to film? Yes, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, you know what?
But,
You do
but
what you
hey,
do. They were very vague. Well, the fact that we could shoot to begin with was new, which was exciting.
Yes.
So no complaints, but also very vague on what that meant and where that meant. So until they kick you out.
And that was our whole thing. A professor once told me, use your credential. Your credential gives you access. Just use it and flash it off as much as you can. And that was kind of our strategy. Was like, well, we do have our credential. We do have this email saying we can film. So, had to talk to some supervisors along the way. But overall, just a really well put together weekend. And, on the actual baseball side, 3 awesome games. Really, really awesome games.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. But that's an interesting point you make about it not really having a Texas mark yet. They got a World Series banner, so you got that. And so maybe they're building towards it. But you're also, when you're standing outside, you're right across the street from Arlington Park at the old ballpark, which is very, very Texas, right? It's that brick, it's that building. Yeah. It feels like you're walking into a ballpark. Globe Life Field, which is right across from the spaceship that is AT&T Stadium, looks a little bit more like I'm walking into some kind of arena. They could play basketball in there. They could play football in there. It's not until you get inside you realize it's a baseball park. Miami, for example, they've got the thing that goes off when you hit home runs, and like you said, Wrigley Park.
I don't know if you knew that.
What?
They moved the statue in Miami out of so it's
really?
outside now. Yeah.
Well, that's real lame. I did not know that.
The whole Jeter thing, when Jeter kind of left, or I guess when Jeter took over, they kicked that out. They moved it outside when they rebranded from that disgusting orange and black and yellow that they were going with the Marlins for a little period of time. Gotta go back to teal, but
okay.
For another time. But to your point.
No hate to Derek Jeter, so I get it. But anyways, I think you're right, and it'll be interesting to see how that ballpark evolves and get some character over the years. It's just really big and techy and new and all that kind of stuff. So that nostalgia feeling is there. And you talked about the competition. So I kind of want to hop there really fast. When you play 3 D1 Power 5 teams in Oregon State and Oklahoma State and Michigan, and those are the only Power 5 teams you're going to play until Missouri and SEC play starts here in a couple of weeks, it really is a litmus test to exactly what this team can do. And not saying anything against JMU or Murray State, Grambling. They've got UCA and Oral Roberts, who just went to the College World Series. But I really think that's exactly what you want to see from your guys against that kind of competition ahead of the league play.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that 3 games, I know all Arkansas fans wanted them to be blowouts last year. They won 18-1, then they lost 18-6 to TCU and won one close game 3-2 against Texas. But this year, every single game was close, and they were all going to be close, because when you're a team like Arkansas with a 2 or a 1 or a 3 or a 5 next to your name, you're going to get the best out of everybody, right? Michigan's not just going to show up to the stadium and go, oh, well, we're going to expect to lose 18-1. No, come on. People who were expecting blowouts this weekend, I think maybe the Michigan game, I think I was expecting a little bit more scoring from them.
But Michigan was in the College World Series a few years ago too.
Right. And Tracy Smith is a great coach, and you're going to get the best out of everybody. You got the best out of Michigan. You clearly got the best out of Oklahoma State, winning on a suicide squeeze on an 0-2 count, which, I mean, my God, what a sequence of events, and kind of just for the team to take that loss and then bounce back the next day and have to win again close. But my point is, you have to win close games. That's how it's going to work. And again, you're getting the best out of everybody. You can go roll over a Grambling State like they did 21-1 the other day. But are you really going to face that down the line? Is that what's going to make you a better team? It's a great tune-up. Don't get me wrong. The guys, I think, needed that game because, the hitting, and we'll talk about it, was just really suspect this weekend, besides that Friday night game with a lot of timely hitting. But still, you look at that game and you go, okay, we know we are deserving of a top 5 spot in the country, and this team absolutely is, and it starts with their pitching staff.
Yeah, I was about to say they won with pitching, which was really good to see. You just hope that it can maintain, right? You don't want to be really, really, really good as a staff early on and then get tired when it matters the most. And so that's maybe, if there's any concern of mine, it's like, let's keep this consistent. Let's see how this carries out through the rest of the season. Before we get into the hitting, I'm curious, watching Oklahoma State for the very first time in person, is there any other team you've ever seen showboat more than they do?
No, not
Because
really.
they do it a lot.
They did
And
a lot. I've heard
they do it
I've
a lot,
heard
and
Ole
they've
Miss does it
always
too.
done it. Like even when Rock Riggio was prancing around third base, and that's just who they are as a team. And Arkansas fans, I know that it drives them nuts, right? And I can understand how, because it's kind of like Yasiel Puig. You love Yasiel Puig when he's on your team. He's not very fun to play against, right?
No.
So if I'm an Oklahoma State fan, I can have fun with a little bit of that showboating a little bit. When you're not, it's just like, it just drives me up the wall. And I don't think anything was more about that the guy who thought he was struck out, who thought he walked to win the game and then ended up striking out. Like that was prime. Like, baseball gods don't really like it either.
And it's funny because on that, Jacob and I later that night, or Sunday, I think, we were talking to two Oklahoma State writers, and they were like, that one was ball 4. And I go back to them. I was like, well, the 2-2 before that made it a full count was strike 3. So like you said, it's the baseball gods have a funny way of working everything out. And kind of to our original point, you can always find hitting, right? Like you can always manufacture runs and figure out ways to do that. You can't find pitching. Once your team's set, your pitchers are what you get, right? So that's something that, to me, and when I was doing my live hit at 5 o'clock, somebody, a Bentonville native, came up to me and asked, what are your takeaways from the weekend? And I go, you know what? I'm not as concerned as I think everybody on the media is going to be because of that point. You can always find hitting. You can always find ways to manufacture runs. You can't find pitching. You can't find pitching like this pitching that we saw this weekend.
Right, absolutely. And going to the hitting before we talk about Hagan Smith, what do you think it was with those hitters? Was it timing? Was it just, a confidence thing, a little bit of both, or what was going on?
Yeah, it's always tough to tell because, you never really know. I think that they faced a lot of good pitchers and that kind of threw them off. There was definitely, there wasn't as many mistakes on the base paths that we saw against James Madison, where they costed themselves, that Sunday loss and the game because of those base running mistakes. I think it's just timely hitting and just not, getting shots down. I think Hudson White had a screamer in that Oklahoma State game that they caught at the top of the fence, 5 feet more, and that's a home run. That ball game is completely different. So it's all just timely hitting. It's going to come. And again, you saw it come against a lower team in Grambling State. But sometimes when you hit a ball really hard, it just goes to the wrong guy. And that's kind of how baseball works. And some days they drop and you get to score 18 runs, and other days they catch the balls and, you're in a 2-1, game or 1-1 game till the 14th inning. So I think, it's really just timeliness and some of the guys, and I don't want to say I'm concerned yet with some of the guys, but I think that DVH made the changes to the lineup intentionally, and I think he had to, because there are definitely some glaring holes right now in this lineup. And I'm going to read numbers, Vahiva Aloy, to me, is the biggest one. 6 of 33, hitting 182. Ryder Helfrich, 2 of 13, hitting 154. And one of those was that home run in his first at bat.
Yeah.
Hudson White, somebody told me after, Hudson White went 0 for the weekend. I think he had maybe 1 hit this weekend.
Yeah.
And again, but he had some hits robbed. He's making good contact. It's not like Aloy, who's kind of just swinging through everything. So I think there's definitely some things with this lineup that needs to be fixed. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of Will Edmondson at the top of the order and Aloy kind of batting down 8 and 9.
Yeah,
So,
and
again,
we'll see.
The only one hitting is Jared Sprague.
Yeah, right. And so, both of us know that hitting is contagious. And you get this lineup going, and the rest of the lineup is going to, step up. And with Aloy and at shortstop, it's not uncommon in years past. I think there are a couple of, Jalen Battle was an exception, I think, where your shortstops are playing for their defense, not necessarily for their bat in the lineup. But it's early, and you're going to get that going a little bit. But you would hope to see them continue just to get a little bit more comfortable. Maybe Kendall Diggs pressing a little bit too much because he is that power bat in the lineup and one of the biggest bats in the lineup, maybe pressing a little too much. So a lot of these guys playing in Razorback uniforms for the very first time, and it's a whole different ballgame when you're playing, even in front of your homestand, right? Like, there's a ton of people out there. It can get nerve-wracking. So it's also been cold. So, but not cold, I get it, inside Globe Life Field. So we'll see how much that changes. I'd be really interested in a couple of weeks when SEC play starts to get going and we see how this offense has evolved and this lineup has evolved offensively
Right.
between
It's
us,
nowhere.
our conversation now and then. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's nowhere at the finished product. It never is. It won't
Yeah.
be that finished product till. Plus, we have to remember what's going to happen when Peyton Stovall gets back in this lineup. Like that's I think the biggest question mark to me right now. And because Jared Sprague-Lott has 5 errors in the first 2 weeks, the rest of the team has 3 total.
Yeah.
So the question is going to be, his bat is too good right now. And DVH said it where he was like, we expected, the glove to be there, not the bat right now. And it's the other way around. So what's going to happen when Stovall gets back to this lineup? Is Aloy going to do enough is my question right now, week 3 of this podcast. Is Aloy going to do enough to improve his bat to stay in the lineup, or is Sprague-Lott potentially going to move over to short because he is a middle infielder back at Richmond?
Yeah, that could happen, or you could see Sprague-Lott turning into your DH down the stretch.
Yeah.
And then we'll flip a little bit back and forth with Peyton Holt at third base because it's hard to take Peyton Holt out of the lineup too because he's such a spark plug. Like the numbers might not show it, but he's a spark plug on the bases and at the plate, so you want to keep him there. All right, let's move on to pitching because we've talked about it. We've alluded to it, and we might as well just get to it. Hagan Smith. We started at this K count heading into the weekend with 2. Now there's 19. And 17 strikeouts in a game is incredible. Again, I'm fighting Flow Sports on my phone with Mike. You're watching it in person. As that was developing, I'd love to hear what was going through your mind.
So I said earlier in the day on the radio that you're going to know a lot about if Hagan is locked in or not against Travis Bazzana, one of arguably the best hitters in all of college baseball, the leadoff hitter for Oregon State. He struck him out and it wasn't close. And the second that kind of happened, I think Hagan took that deep breath out and was like, okay, I'm here. I've arrived at 2024. And us up in the press box took that deep breath out and being like, oh, this is about to be a show. Like, and it genuinely was. Like, this was a performance. Nobody's ever seen something like it before. And I was reading a little this morning that some of the scouts were saying Hagan Smith right now is more MLB ready than Paul Skeens was last year. Wow. That's just the difference. And it showed. Like, Travis Bazzana hit, 3 home runs last weekend against Oklahoma State and Michigan and had a ton of most of his hard hit balls were in, the hundreds. He came close on one at bat against Hagan, and that was it. So the second that first at bat was over, we knew, okay, this is going to be a good game. Did we expect 17 strikeouts? No, I don't think anybody can. But wow, what a performance. It was just fun to watch, right? Like seeing the crowd get hyped. And Hagan is somebody who we talk about a lot, the quiet confidence. You saw it on the mound that when he got settled in, he was rolling. And then at the end, where Jacob and I kind of thought he would have had another inning or 2 in the tank, but again, he was on pitch count. I think he threw 78 pitches. It was efficiency, and then at the end, it was just that pure emotion that he showed to the crowd and got everyone riled up. And there was a lot of fans, and it was just such an awesome game to watch. And just to see him bounce back, we knew he would. We didn't know how well he would bounce back, but to be that dominant as the ace that we thought he would be, this pitching staff is unreal.
Yeah, it was incredible. And I turned on the game late and was able to watch some that Friday night, and it obviously not seeing it from start to finish is a little different than what you guys were doing, but we've spent some time with Hagan. His calm collectiveness, that quiet confidence, but yet stature he walks with, it just resonates through the screen, right? It's incredible to watch him carry himself with what he was doing, and you could tell that the Hagan Smith that he has wanted to be for the last 2 years has finally arrived. That's what I saw. I saw everything that these recruits, that Matt Hobbs saw when he was recruiting him out of high school as a freshman, coming in, doing what he did. The potential that Matt Hobbs has always said that he has had, we saw it for the very, very first time in a complete package.
Right. I mean, he was sitting 96 to 98, touching 99, 100 miles an hour. I mean,
insane.
He will be the first pitcher taken in the MLB draft. There's no question. Can he jump to that top 3? I think absolutely. And again, now he kind of gets to sit back and relax. And I say relax, but you're not going to face, like we've talked about, as good of hitting with Murray State and, some of the other non-conference foes coming up. So it's a good time to really gear up and settle back in at home at Baum Walker. but he put on the whole pitching staff, like I've said, put on an
Yeah.
absolute show. And they talk about it is that they all have kind of a fire to make each other better, and that's what you want. Mason Molina is the best Sunday starter in the country, right? Like he's striking out 9 guys on a Sunday.
He could be a
You
Friday
absolutely
starter
see that.
anywhere else.
Absolutely. I would say he could be a Friday starter in probably 10 out of 14 teams in the SEC.
Yeah.
And he's the Sunday starter because he wanted to come to Arkansas to win because of how good this team is. And just kind of shows you, and even Jacob and I were talking about it, like the freshman, when you saw Gabe Gackle on Saturday night, and he goes in, and I asked Dave after, I was like, you put him in after because he struggled. People, we forget he struggled last week, and that's something I think we have to mention because he's a freshman. We don't know what he's going to do, but to kind of have the guts to put Gabe Gackle in, bases loaded, 1 out, bottom of the 9th, a chance to hold or close. And he held convincingly and did it. And that was awesome to see. Just him and Colin Fisher, both of them are going to be studs. Like they're going to be really good, but it starts with Hagan. It starts at the top.
Yeah. Talking with this pitching staff, one thing too, like Hagan is such a cool kid, right? Like he's a guy you want to cheer for. He's down to earth. He just likes hanging out with his dog and doing stuff outside, and like that's Hagan Smith, right? And you just love to cheer for him and be in his corner. So it's good to see with him. And the freshman again, Colin Fisher doesn't look like a freshman. It's incredible. Really impressed with the guys that they have brought in. I think a guy that got credit after that game against Oregon State and struggled a little bit against Oklahoma State was Jake Flaherty. But Dave Van Horn said afterwards, I watched a video of like, I told you were the guy for the job, and you did. And that's the kind of thing where like he's going to continue to get better and learn from the successes against Oregon State and the a little bit of a struggle against Oklahoma State. A guy that I really want to continue to see more of come along a little bit because he had such a good section of his freshman season is Gage Wood. And what can Gage Wood's role be? Because, is he a closer? Is he a reliever? Like, where does Gage Wood fall into all of this?
Yeah, and that's a really good question because I didn't think Gage had a great outing.
Yeah.
I mean, he gave up just a mammoth home run. I was doing some work setting up our late shows quickly, and then all of a sudden you see Gage Wood comes in and ding a couple batters later, and it's just a missile by Oklahoma or Oregon State, and you're like, this isn't that good, and kind of. But you also look at Will McIntyre, didn't have a great weekend this weekend, but had a phenomenal weekend last weekend, and that's the ebbs and flows of baseball. But yeah, I'd be curious if Gage kind of settles in somewhere, whether that's kind of long innings reliever after Will or that lockdown closer. But I thought his velo was a little bit down. It was sitting like 94, 96. We've seen Gage up to about 98, 99 before. So I thought his velo was sitting a little bit low. But I think, again, that all just comes with timing and getting into the season and figuring out, okay, what is my true role? But that's the tough thing early on, and DVH is trying to figure out who are his guys. We saw Cody Frank getting used to end the Michigan game, and a couple days earlier was coming in the 6th inning. So I think it's all the kind of that figuring out stage for this team and for DVH of where to use the guys. But yeah, I'll be curious about Gage Wood. And before we stop about talking about pitching, can we also just talk about Brady Tiger? Like I feel like he is flying so under the radar, and not enough people are giving him love. Like he went out and threw a gem of 5 innings.
Yeah.
In that first game. His ERA right now is 0.82. I mean, that's just incredible. And you've seen it, and he did it against Oklahoma State, and we saw it again the week before against James Madison, where this guy and he's kind of the forgotten, I'd like to say, of the 3 starters, just because he's just so consistent, and what you're going to get out of Brady Tiger every week. And I just wanted to give him some love.
Absolutely deserving. No, and I think that's the thing with Brady is he's just doing what he's supposed to be doing, right? You show up and you do your job. And right now, we're not talking about you per se because you're just getting your job done, right? But he absolutely deserves the credit. And, for a guy who's coming back from injury, and again, as a freshman, was a closer. And you're stepping into that starting role, and you were there last year, but then you got hurt. It's really good to see Brady kind of make a name for himself quietly. Very quietly, just out there doing his job, and he
doesn't have those 19 Ks that Molino or Hagan Smith has, but 10 Ks, and he's just consistent. 5 hits given up in his 2 starts, only 1 run, 1 earned. consistency.
That's
And that's, I think, what you want.
That's what
from,
you want.
a Saturday starter who's
Yeah.
going to go out and give you a chance to win every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I want to ask you before we kind of just preview real fast Murray State, 'cause we've got a few more minutes here, is what you want to see heading into this Murray State game series. Because what we saw against Grambling State and 20 hits and 21 runs, and that was exciting. But don't let it be fool's gold, right?
No.
Got to kind of continue to get back to the basics. And maybe Murray State for me is maybe where you show a little bit more of the manufacturing of the runs and the offense, a little more small ball, a little more strategy there with hitting base hits, getting guys in, and not the long ball so much. I would like to see that.
I think you hit it nails on the head. Like, that is exactly what I was going to say, is how do they now take a great offensive day, two grand slams in this game, one by Parker Coyle, who we have not seen the entire season, and the other one by Jason Jones. And it's consistency from some of these guys like Jason Jones, Will Edmondson being a little bit consistent.
Yeah.
I mean, Diggs and McLaughlin are always going to come through.
You meant
Jared
Hudson
Sprague,
Polk.
I'd like to Hudson Polk. Yes,
yeah,
thank you.
I get it.
I always get confused with Parker Coyle and Hudson Polk.
Yeah, I get it.
I don't know why.
No, it's okay.
But yes,
I knew what you
Hudson
meant.
Polk, thank you. Yes, that's all that matters. So yeah, I think just that consistency that I'd like to see a little bit more of, just from overall,
Yeah.
and like you said, manufacturing runs to kind of keep it short and sweet. Also, Jared Sprague, please clean up your errors, dude.
please, we love you. You've been fun to watch. Let's see.
And I don't
if you
know.
can clean up. And I think so.
We
A
might
guy
have
that
talked
we
about
wanted
him too with
Yeah.
JSL really quickly, but this guy's been to the Little League World Series. Like, I think he'll figure it out. I mean, he was teammates on that Monet Davis Mid-Atlantic team a couple of years ago. I think I played against him in high school ball before. Not high school, in like club ball up in Jersey.
Yeah.
Because he's a Philly area kid, but we could talk about that at another date and time. But yeah, I think, again, consistency overall.
Sure. Yeah, you know what? Obviously their first base coach in Bobby Warnes had web gym after web gym playing third base when he was at Arkansas. So maybe you can give him some notes.
Yeah.
This is how you have
Real
web
quick
gyms
notes
on third base. Real quick, little notes.
And he's
just
already had
just a little
plenty.
tidbit of notes, just a few.
Exactly.
All right, but again, Murray State up this weekend, gonna be fun. Hopefully, we're gonna be talking about more wins. Should be talking about more wins. Wouldn't expect anything less this time next week. They've also got a midweek game against UCA, which is always fun. Those in-state schools that come up here. Always fun to talk about, too. So looking forward to our next episode of Batting Cleanup. If there's anything you want us to talk about, let us know. Hit the comments, hit our emails, our social media, and we will make sure to get them in the conversation. For Evan Kamiko, I'm Melissa Orange. We will see you next week. Goodbye.